Welcome to a video that I'm entitling Behind the Scenes of the Amateur Traveler. I'm planning on showing you how the show is made. The first thing to notice is that the Amateur Traveler is recorded with a headset microphone. It's a Plantronics microphone, and part of the reason for that is so that I can look around the room and not lose the connection to the microphone. The interviews are recorded with Skype, and so let's go right into one of the interviews and show you how that's done. The first step in the process is to call my guest using Skype, and I'm using a program called Call Recorder, which will automatically start recording the call.
Oh, Chris.
Hi, Elizabeth. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. And now I'm done with the interview, and what I end up with is this file. I've renamed it to Walt Disney World, which is the title of the podcast. It was originally named with her Skype name, my guest Skype name, as well as a date, and you can see that this is a QuickTime file. And the interesting thing that Call Recorder does is it puts me and the guest on a different track, and that's all fine in this file, but I need to split this file to get two different tracks that I can use for the editing that I'm going to do in Garageband. So first I'm going to use the Split Movie Tracks utility, and this is a utility that comes with Call Recorder. And so I've got both of those files. I can quit that program, and now I'm going to take the first one and I'm going to convert it to an AIFF file, again just by dragging it on this other utility that came from Call Recorder. I'm going to repeat that for both files. This will take a couple minutes to do. The split is pretty quick, and this takes a little longer, and then the next step is going to be longer still. And so now I've converted both of those files from the MOV files, the split files, into AIFF. I actually don't need these files anymore. I'm going to keep this one because that's going to be my backup, because I can always recreate it. And then I'm running a program called the Levelator from the Conversations Network. I always run this. It makes my sound levels the same on both tracks and also makes them more even from show to show. This one's going to take a little longer, and so I'm going to drag this on here. You're going to see that it's going to give us a progress dialog pretty soon, pretty soon, pretty soon. There you go, 1% done. And so this is going to be one of those you drag it on here and you go get a cup of tea. Okay, Levelator's done. That took a little over 10 minutes total to do all the levelating, and so we're about 44 minutes of interviewing so far, and in about 15 minutes of other things. We're about an hour into prep time so far. And I have my cup of tea. And now these files here, the original AIF files, I don't need anymore, so I'm going to throw those away. I'm going to go into GarageBand. I'm going to create a new episode. This is going to be episode 131. This is just a naming convention I use to keep things straight. And I'm going to put that up here in my GarageBand folder. There we go. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my audio, and I'm going to pull in the theme song for the Amateur Traveler. I'm going to get rid of the female voice track here. And now I'm ready to go. I have this set into ducking mode, which is the default mode here, which means that I can talk over the theme song and the theme song will turn down. I'm going to turn down the theme song just a little bit here, just to a level that I know works. I'm going to select this. I'm going to record about 10 seconds of the theme song before I come in with my intro.
I got my bags packed on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo.
Amateur Traveler, episode 131. Today on the Amateur Traveler, we talk to Elizabeth, who's a VIP tour guide at Walt Disney World in Orlando. We'll talk about our favorite rides, our favorite food, and all those little surprises today on the Amateur Traveler. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into the interview with Elizabeth, I do have two news stories for you today. Now that sounds a little louder for you than it will be in the actual show because the ducking happens later on. I am going to fade out the theme song here as I go into the news stories, and then I'll close up that track. And then I'm ready to start recording news stories. I have found a couple news stories here from my Tripinator blog here. So I'll set those all ready to go and go back here and press the record button. The first news story I have for you today is good news for Kenya, anyone planning on traveling to Kenya, and the Kenya tourism industry. And that is that the United States has amended a travel advisory cautioning against travel to parts of Kenya, saying that threats of violence have dramatically receded following a political power-sharing deal. You may recall that there was a deeply flawed presidential election on December 27th, and there was after that quite a lot of unrest, bloodshed. About 1,000 people were killed, and so it took one of the stablest countries in Africa and made it someplace that tourists were avoiding in great numbers. But the good news is things are stabilizing in that country. It's actually the next day now. It's not uncommon for me, since I do a lot of my editing at night, to do the editing over multiple different days. So I have actually recorded both my news stories now, and I'm going to start putting in something in the podcasting track, and this is how I make the iTunes enhanced version of the show. And so I'm going to go here and select a particular spot to put in a chapter. And then I'm going to need the information for the chapter. I'm going to go back to my news stories. I'm actually going to copy two things at once rather than copy and go back and forth. So I'm going to copy the title and then the URL and then go back to Garageband and paste in using Jump Cut, which is a program I'm using which allows me to have 25 different things in my cut, copy, and paste buffer. And now I've got that particular chapter. Later on I'll come here and I'll put in artwork, and we'll do that later on. So I'm going to do that for the second news story that you haven't heard as well as the next step. Okay, I'm pretty much done with the intro of the system. The only thing I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to add in some music. I'm going to add in a stinger here just before we start in the interview. Let's go down here and grab... Yeah, let's go grab that. That's a good stinger. I'll just put that up here at the jingles line here. So then I'll go from... Oh, I can move that over a little. Actually need to do that about there. So it's going to... traveler.com. Fine. And then, at this point, I'm going to drag in back here from my file system, these two files that I made with Levelator and put them right here, and that's going to import those. That's going to take a little while, especially for them to be rendered correctly, so we're going to end the first part of this how-to episode here so that it'd still be under 10 minutes long, and then I'll show you the rest of the process as part of the second part. So stay tuned. Remember that this is a making of the Amateur Traveler, amateurtraveler.com.